Hello everyone and welcome. Now today we are going to look at the WonderSwan Color, a unique and interesting handheld. The WonderSwan hand console there are 3 different versions of it, and they were all only in Japan. They were basically published by Bandai. But interestingly enough, it was made by Gunpei Yokoi. You might be asking, who the hell is Gunpei Yokoi? If you're a really devoted Game Boy person, you'll probably know the name. If not, then well. Gunpei Yokoi is the original creator of the Game Boy, which of course is one of the most awesome people in the world. Also, he is the beloved father of Metroid. So if you're a good hardcore Metroid person, or Kid Icarus for that fact, Gunpei Yokoi should be in your fucking shrine of worship. So we're going to be looking at the handheld itself. Now, interestingly, as you may already notice, there's these here, along with the 2 plus, you got A and B, and you got these that look like 2, up, down, left, rights. You also got sound and start and the power button, which are all pushing buttons, not like sliding, clicking buttons. Now, there is a side port here. There were a number of accessories. I'm not 100% sure on all of them. There's a contrast slider and a little thing for a little, like a wish strap or something. Now, what's interesting, one of the first things that's interesting, let's unlock this and get this thing of a nightmare out. Now, important to continue noting, I always hate getting this, here we go. Alright, so this is where the battery goes, and it only runs on 1 battery. Only 1, just 1. Just 1 delightful battery. I mean, that's pretty nice, considering it is probably a little below or on par with the original Game Boy Color. I would say personally it's a little below, but anyway, it just simply slides in here, clicks in there, and you lock it in. And there you go. Now, as you probably already noticed, there's Clock Tower there, which is one of the 3 games I have for it. Now, there was the original WonderSwan, which, like the original Game Boy, can play on a WonderSwan Color. Hero Bots, which is basically Pokemon with basically everything Gundam. And probably some other franchises, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know there's Gundam shit now. And then there's Clock Tower. Yeah, Clock Tower was on the original WonderSwan. How bizarre. The only WonderSwan Color game I have, which interestingly was made by someone you might be familiar with, sorry, I didn't mean to fuck up the focus, is Wildcard by Squaresoft, a role-playing card game. I've tried playing this. I have no idea what to do, sadly. The game is very confusing because there's really no tutorials or anything for the game. So, sadly, it's a lot of shame. Clock Tower ain't too difficult. Hero Bots, kind of varies. So anyway, the cartridges are actually interestingly odd. So here you go. You got the cartridge, which looks like kind of like the shape of a Game Boy Advance cartridge. If you want a comparison, give me a second here. Here's Dynasty Warriors for the Game Boy Advance, and there it is lined up with the side of the cartridge. As you can see, it is slightly bigger on the side and lower there, but it's not too much bigger than a Game Boy Advance cartridge. But what's really bizarre is the fact that the pins are actually sticking out here. There's no cover of them. That's the pins actually sticking out, and that is slightly bizarre, but that's how it's designed, and it just simply slips in. You want to be careful because there's a little plastic piece there that the plastic on the side there slides through, so you need to make sure it's all the way against there and slide it on in, and your game will simply go into place like any other Game Boy. Now, the interesting design of this is, now, as you can probably tell, it's meant to be held like a Game Boy Advance, and that's the most common way to play it. But you might have thought about, there's another way of playing it. there are indeed games that support playing the WonderSwan this way, and it makes very nice use of games where, like, say, you know, you're playing and you're shooting shit upward and stuff. The kind of scroll shooter game of that design, and it can work very nicely that way. I do not have a game that makes use of that, but you can find games that make use of that. But obviously the more common way is like a Game Boy Advance on the side there. Now, it has a pretty decent battery life, but obviously because of the single battery, it's not the most powerful thing in the world. It came around the early 2000s. Now, the third version of the WonderSwan was called the WonderSwan Crystal. And it was a little more powerful, and I never quickly, it can play original WonderSwan in color games, I believe, if I never quickly. Like I said, mine is color, just a reiterate. It supposedly had a much better screen for playing in that, along with, you know, just slight little tweaks to its design. But overall, the Crystal looks pretty much the same, with the same sideways design. Now, the WonderSwan is not incredibly expensive if you're interested in the device. The device itself can be done pretty reasonable. I got my WonderSwan a long time ago when it was a lot more rare to kind of fiddle around with this shit. These days, you know, it's a lot easier to pop on, even on Amazon and eBay and stuff, and find this stuff for sale, so... a lot of the games are not too expensive. They're about 10, 20 usually per game of that. You know, obviously throwing in importing and that. Of course, it does vary a bit, but overall, they're not too expensive. There is some interesting games on there, and I have been meaning to get more WonderSwan games, but I never got around to it. Now, here's an interesting thing about the WonderSwan a lot of people don't know. Before America got the Final Fantasy 1-2 remake on the PlayStation 1, it actually was released for the WonderSwan Color. Now, of course, obviously we already know Squaresoft has supported this, but it's a little interesting that, you know, it's a console that had Final Fantasy games on it that never came out of Japan. A little bizarre, especially since it's from Bandai. Which, being a toy company, you'd think they'd probably be interested in releasing it to where kids are available to get. Wee mummy. But, well, it never came out of the country. But, overall, if you're interested in getting one, it's not too hard to get one these days. I've been meaning to get a Crystal myself now. That's a lot easier to get them. Like I said, back then it wasn't so easy a long time ago. It's also why it's pink. But, very short showing of a very slightly bizarre offspring of Gunpei Yokoi. But is there anything else he possibly created that we haven't talked about yet?